we're, call it 4 years into this thing, Mr. Ambassador, and it's good to have you here on Bloomberg TV and radio. After persisting for 4 years, we have not seen any real change of tune or desire on the part of Vladimir Putin to, at the very least, capture the territory in Ukraine that Russia currently holds. And we understand that the territory issue is the one that really is holding things up here. How is that possibly going to get resolved when you have Zelenskyy saying they aren't willing to hand any of it over to Russia?
There are two opposite views. You're exactly right. There's no overlap. The Ukrainians want to be a country. They want to be a sovereign country. They want to live European. The Russians want them to surrender. The Russians want to dominate Ukraine, take it over. There's no middle ground there. Now, there is a way to get to some kind of a ceasefire. But Christine put it exactly right. President Trump needs to put the pressure on Putin. Putin, without that pressure, is not going to agree to anything.
You're a diplomat. You want to talk by nature, to keep talking, to solve problems. When is it appropriate not to talk? Is it not now?
Talking, Joe, is fine. Talking is fine.
But it's also rewarding sometimes to give someone like Putin a platform to talk.
Talking is fine, but you're exactly right. What that does is drag it out. And Putin has been dragging it out because he wants to grind away at the Ukrainians day after day, month after month, year after year. As you say, coming up on 4 years. Putin thinks that this grind will eventually allow him to win. He thinks that the Ukrainians will someday give up. They won't. He thinks someday the Europeans will back away from Ukraine. They're not. Europeans are really stepping up. Putin hopes that the Americans will get tired and lose interest. And so far, to be fair to the Trump administration, they've not given up. They're still focused. I mean, they're there in Geneva today.
But as you suggest, there's more pressure that they could put on. As we talk about Putin dragging this on, continuing on with this war, he has to be able to continue to fund the war machine in order to do that. So is that really where the screws need to be tightened?
Two screws need to be tightened, and that's one of them. Absolutely right. Putin funds this war by selling oil and gas to the world. And he uses this shadow fleet, these tankers, these old tankers that evade the sanctions. And these old tankers move oil from Russia to India and really to China. And President Trump has shown that he knows how to crack down on the shadow fleet. That would be a big hit to the Russian ability to. But the second piece, the second screw, is long-range weapons for the Ukrainians. These are the Tomahawks. This would allow the Ukrainians to put a real dent into the Russian war machine. Going after military targets in Russia, that could do it. Those two things on the military side and on the economic side.
Russia seems to think, according to the narrative here in Washington, that there's a window of opportunity here before the administration starts to bear down on midterms, focus on domestic issues. You've got the president's attention here. Maybe we can get something favorable to Moscow, knowing that, of course, Vladimir Putin has offered nothing really to Ukraine. Does that create a dangerous moment when you have Donald Trump hoping to make a deal? He's assembling the Board of Peace here tomorrow. And Vladimir Putin hoping to get this done in a certain period of time? Or does it not work that way in the world of diplomacy?
I think it won't work that way, Joe. I think the reason it won't is if President Trump thinks he can lean on the Ukrainians, who are the victors, who want to be the victors, and they are the victims so far. If President Trump thinks he can lean on the Ukrainians as the victims, that's not a win. That's not a win. If he forces a surrender, a capitulation, which the Ukrainians will resist, totally resist. But if that's what Trump tries to do, he'll fail. He'll fail. He doesn't want to be a loser. That would be a loss.
Well, so let's talk about Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine, in this, because he obviously has made great effort to stay on side with the Trump administration, knowing how poorly things had gone in the past, if we all think back to that meeting in the Oval Office last year. At the same time, President Trump does seem to be, at least for this time being, less patient with Volodymyr Zelenskyy than he is with Vladimir Putin. So how does Zelenskyy, as a head of state, have to navigate that kind of relationship? How difficult is this moment for him, knowing he doesn't want to have to give up? He doesn't want to have to surrender, whatever President Trump
Kelly,
wants.
you're exactly right. It's very difficult. He will not surrender. Zelenskyy will not surrender, even if he's under great pressure from President Trump. And President Trump needs to understand that will not be a success. That will not be successful. And President Zelenskyy is doing two things. He's trying to keep the Americans supportive. He's done everything, done pretty well, actually, since that horrible meeting last year. He's done that pretty well. But at the same time, he's building up the capabilities himself, defense industrial capabilities in Ukraine, as well as the Europeans providing not only the funds, but also the weapons. So he's doing both things. He's trying to keep the Americans on board, but at the same time become more independent.
New York Times column today, Trump bets on diplomacy without diplomats. And David Sanger shares the byline to write that some Russians have now taken to calling the duo Witkoff and Zayatkoff, because Zayat is Russian for son-in-law. The Iranians also have a nickname for Kushner, using the Persian word for son-in-law, Damad Trump, defining his influence by virtue of his marriage to the president's daughter. What do you think of that as a career diplomat?
You do need, as we talked earlier, Joe, we need to talk. Diplomats do talk.
Does that bring leverage, though, that someone else might not have?
What brings leverage is connection to the one man who's making the decision.
So this is a good thing, then?
This gives them credibility. This gives them credibility. And more credibility than lower-level diplomats would certainly have. So yes, if Witkoff and Kushner can bring a deal because they've got Trump sitting right behind them, then that's a fine thing. That's whatever gets that peace, the just and lasting peace, that will be fine.
Well, but this is not their exclusive area of focus. As we noted in Geneva yesterday, they went to the Ukraine-Russia talks after the Iran nuclear talks. Is there not some kind of conflict in being able to address these two things adequately?
Addressing it adequately is the right question. These are both complicated issues, very complicated. They've gone back years. Both of them have gone back years. And there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of nuance there. It's a complicated, both are complicated issues. You got to hope that they're getting some support from some other parts of the government, because they don't have it themselves. They need to have that kind of support.
We were struck by the post on Twitter from Zelenskyy following the first meeting and ahead of the second, which, by the way, was over in 90 minutes, we understand. He wrote, "Yesterday's meetings were indeed difficult, and we can state that Russia is trying to drag out negotiations that could already have reached the final stage. I thank the American side," he says, "for its attention to detail and patience in conversations with the current representatives of Russia." So now you've got Ukraine apologizing for Russia at the table on top of it. I'm sure he's got a little bit of a wink as he's writing that, Ambassador. But what does that tell you about his posture before a third meeting?
So the Ukrainians have sent very senior people. The head of the delegation is the chief of staff. The other head of the delegation is the National Security and Defense Council. And then there's a deputy Ministry of Defense person. They've got a senior folks there. They got a group of senior people. The Russians don't. The Russian delegation was headed by, I think, a deputy culture minister earlier. So that suggests to you that, again, even on the Russian side, there's not a depth of understanding.
We have just a minute left, Ambassador, but coming off of the Munich Security Conference this weekend, were you encouraged by what we heard from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, in contrast to J.D. Vance last year, what it means for not just Ukraine, but other European allies?
Compared to the J.D. Vance speech, yes. But the message was basically the same, Kayleigh. The message was the same. Pretty much America first. But the other big message coming out of that was where he went next, where Rubio went next. I mean, he went to Slovakia and he went to Hungary. That tells you that there's not a change in message.